In the 1860s, a quiet Austrian monk named Gregor Mendel spent 8 years growing pea plants in a monastery garden. He crossed tall plants with short ones, purple flowers with white ones, smooth peas with wrinkled ones, and from thousands of careful experiments, he discovered the rules of inheritance, the laws that explain how traits are passed from parents to children. One allele from your mother, one from your father. Dominant traits overpower recessive ones. Tall beats short, purple beats white. These rules, Mendel's laws, became the foundation of genetics. Every biology textbook in the world teaches them. Every student memorizes them. Every genetic test, every hereditary disease diagnosis, every DNA analysis is built on the assumption that Mendel got it right. And for over 160 years, he did. Until May 2026. A team of researchers led by Andrew Feinberg at Johns Hopkins University and colleagues at Texas A&M University published a study in Nature Genetics that found something the textbooks never prepared us for. Some inherited traits do not follow Mendel's rules at all. The study tracked 3 generations of mice using the most detailed DNA analysis ever applied to the question of inheritance. And what they found was not a minor exception. They discovered 522 cases where inherited genetic patterns broke Mendel's laws. That is not a handful of odd results. That is 7% of all the epigenetic inheritance patterns they tracked. A share so large that the researchers say these exceptions are not biological curiosities. They may be a fundamental part of how life works. And the implications, for medicine, for evolution, and for our understanding of what makes you who you are staggering. To understand what the researchers found, you need to understand 2 concepts. The first is DNA, the genetic code you inherited from your parents. It is the blueprint, the sequence of letters that tells your cells how to build proteins, how to grow, how to function. Mendel's laws govern how this DNA is passed down. The second concept is epigenetics, and this is where things get strange. Epigenetics refers to chemical modifications that sit on top of your DNA without changing the code itself. Think of it like this. If DNA is the text of a book, epigenetics is the highlighting. Some sentences are highlighted and active. Others are crossed out and silenced. The most common type of epigenetic modification is called DNA methylation. A small chemical group, a methyl group, attaches to specific locations on the DNA strand. When a gene is methylated, it is essentially switched off. When it is unmethylated, it is switched on. These methylation patterns affect which genes are active in your body, and they can be inherited. Your parents pass down not just their DNA, but their methylation patterns too. Now, here is where Mendel's laws should apply. According to the rules, you inherit one allele from each parent, and the dominant one wins. But the Johns Hopkins study found 522 cases where the methylation patterns did not follow this rule. In some cases, a gene was silenced based on which parent it came from, not based on whether it was dominant or recessive. This is called genomic imprinting, and the team found it in 5 previously unknown genes. If you are fascinated by this, subscribe to the Odd Vault and hit the bell, because the next discovery is even more unsettling. In other cases, the inherited methylation patterns could not be traced to either parent. They appeared out of nowhere. The offspring carried epigenetic marks that neither the mother nor the father had. Something in the process of inheritance itself was creating new instructions that did not exist in either parent's genome. And perhaps the most extraordinary finding was the discovery of the first naturally occurring paramutation ever observed in a mammal. A paramutation is when one allele permanently changes the other allele it is paired with. In Mendel's world, alleles are independent. A dominant allele silences a recessive one, but it does not change it. In a paramutation, one allele literally rewrites its partner. This had been seen before in plants and insects, never in a mammal, until now. So what does all of this mean? It means that the way traits are passed from parents to children is far more complex than anyone taught you in school. Mendel's laws still work. They still explain the majority of genetic inheritance, but they are not the whole story. There is a second layer, an epigenetic layer, that operates by different rules. Rules that are influenced not just by your genes, but by your environment. Your diet, your stress levels, your exposure to toxins, your experiences. Andrew Feinberg, the lead researcher, put it this way. He said, "Non-Mendelian patterns of inheriting epigenetics could be a faster way to acquire diverse or new traits than alterations in the genomic sequence itself, especially in response to environmental pressures." Think about what that means. Traditional genetic evolution is slow. A beneficial mutation appears randomly, survives natural selection, and spreads through a population over thousands of generations. But epigenetic inheritance could work much faster. If your environment changes, if there is a famine, a plague, a shift in climate, your body can modify its epigenetic marks in response, and those modifications can be passed to your children. Not in thousands of generations, in one. This is not Lamarckism, the long discredited idea that a giraffe stretches its neck and its offspring inherit longer necks. This is something more subtle and more real. Your body is not changing its DNA in response to the environment. It is changing which parts of the DNA are active, and those changes are heritable. The researchers are now planning to study these patterns in human genomic data. If the same non-Mendelian patterns exist in humans, and there is every reason to believe they do, it could transform how doctors track hereditary diseases. Some conditions that seem to appear randomly in families might actually follow epigenetic patterns that we have never known to look for. A disease might skip generations, not because of a hidden recessive gene, but because of an epigenetic mark that was silenced and then reactivated. Gregor Mendel spent 8 years in a monastery garden and discovered the rules that govern biology for over a century. He was not wrong, but he was incomplete. There is more to inheritance than the DNA code. There are marks on top of the code, invisible instructions that can be created, modified, and passed down in ways that Mendel never imagined. Your genes are not your destiny, but neither are your parents' genes. Something in between, something shaped by environment, experience, and mechanisms we are only beginning to understand, is writing instructions that will be read by generations you will never meet. You are not just the product of your DNA, you are the product of everything your ancestors experienced, written in a language we are only now learning to read. This has been The Odd Vault. If this unlocked something in your mind, subscribe, because we open a new vault every week. What they didn't tell you, we will.